Good afternoon, secular fam, and happy Friday. I don't know about you, but like every year since 2016, we have been subjected to a fire hose of chaos. And this year is no different. But I will tell you that this year I am energized. Last year, I was just talking to a guest today about this. I was anxious, I was depressed most weeks, but now I am inspired by what is happening in the Twin Cities. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm also disgusted, I'm angered, I'm saddened by these lawless thugs who kidnap and traffic children and spray, tase, and shoot protesters indiscriminately. But have you seen this community that the citizens of Minnesota have created? I mean, it's amazing. It's a thing of beauty. I asked the team today to drop a video in the chat from the TV series Andor because this show, it doesn't matter if you don't like Star Wars, this show has somehow encapsulated the moment that we all find ourselves in. I mean, albeit it is in a fictional universe that was a long time ago and in a galaxy far, far away, but it really hits upon the themes of fascism and what we're witnessing here in our own country. So go ahead and watch it at your leisure, but it's a great show. I'm not getting any money from Disney. I don't even like Disney really, but just watch it. It's really good. Next week, we are going to be speaking with Rebecca Boyle to discuss her latest book, Our Moon, How Earth's Celestial Companion Transformed the Planet, Guided Evolution, and Made Us Who We Are. So you don't want to miss that. But for today, we are speaking with two individuals. First, we have Megan Goodwin, PhD. She is an editorial consultant at Religious Dispatches, one of our favorite publications, and media and tech consultant for the Crossroads Project. Her research centers on race, religion, gender, sexuality, and politics in what's now the United States. Her first book, Abusing Religion, Religious Persecution, Sex Scandals, and American Minority Religions, is available through Rutgers. Her next project, can't wait for this, is Cults Inc., the business of bad religion. You know, I've watched every cult documentary and read as many books as I possibly can. So if you do have any good like cult documentaries happening right now that are streaming, please let me know. Um, and our other guest today is Dr. Morgenstein Fuerst. She is an associate professor of religion and the director of the Humanities Center at the University of Vermont. Her formal expertise is in Islam in South Asia, racialization of Muslims, and global histories of imperialism. Her first book, Indian Muslim Minorities and the 1857 Rebellion, Religion, Rebels, and Jihad, is available through Bloomsbury. She's also co-editor of Words of Experience. And now I am, because I didn't put it in there, because you need to also tell us, please, the name of your podcast, because they also do a podcast together, and I'm completely blanking on the name of it. So go ahead.
Keeping It 101, a Killjoy's Introduction to Religion podcast.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's a great podcast. So you want to make sure that you check it out wherever you can stream their podcasts. So without any further ado, I will, like I said, monitor the chat. And I'm mostly going to hand it over to you. But first, I guess I should say, is there anything besides your podcast, which is like the most important part, that I missed about your bios?
No, that was really thorough. Thank you so much for introducing us.
Okay, I'll just hand it off to you.
Great. Well, hello everyone. We are so excited to join you at Secular AZ, all the way from the other side of the country. So I'm coming to you from Vermont, all the way in the Northeast, and Megan is joining us from North Carolina. And we are here to talk about religion, which sounds a little strange for a group of secularists, perhaps. On our podcast, Keeping It 101, a Killjoy's Introduction to Religion podcast, we argued that everyone needs to care about religion regardless of whether or not they are religious. And then we did a really annoying thing, which was we took 117 or so episodes of a podcast, and then we wrote a completely different book with some riffs from the podcast called Religion Is Not Done With You, which I think is the book club book of whatever we're talking about today. In that book, we had a similar argument that you might be done with religion, but as Megan likes to say, religion is not done with you. I'm going to wait for Goodwin to stop talking because I poorly timed the, hey, Megan, can you tell us what we mean by religion is not done with you? You'd think after 6 years of a podcast, we'd have that down, folks. We do not.
No, we fix it in post. Hi, hello. I would love to talk to you about what it means to say that religion isn't done with you. And I suspect, particularly in a group of secularists, there's a lot of ugh when we say that. Trust us when we say that Beacon, our publisher, also had a similar like, ooh, I don't, that seems aggressive and it makes my tummy hurt. And we said, good, because that means you're paying attention. Here's the thing. Even if you had never heard Jesus or Muhammad or Moses or any other word about religion, you live in the world, and the world has been shaped by religion, which is another way of saying imperialism, which is a long, long story that, hey, good news, we wrote a book about it. But the short version is, even if you yourself have absolutely no religious convictions, commitments, upbringing, connections, your laws, your health care, your calendar are all shaped by not just religion, but very specifically Western Christianity. And I think it's really easy to fall into a like, hey, did you know? Oh, this is so interesting. And we're both PhD folks. We get sucked into a, oh, that's interesting all the time. Here's the thing. It's not just like cute facts. The thing is that we currently live in a country that has been structured by white Christian nationalism from its very inception. So this means that religion isn't just like a cute part of people's individual lives. It is structurally in the source code of this nation. And we have, for reasons that are becoming deeply very clear at the moment, strongly disincentivized public conversations about religion and particularly critical thinking about religion. And when you say, ooh, religion is personal, religion is individual, that's none of my business, it's not polite to talk about, what happens is we never learn to think critically about religion. And as a result, we're not trained to see it operating in our institutions, our schools, again, our hospitals, our courts, our governing bodies, which means that the folks whose religion is winning keep winning because we don't know even how to diagnose the problem, much less respond to it. So lots more to say there. But the very short version is, even if you wish you never heard the word religion, you can't get outside it. You can't escape from it, which again sounds bleak. But it is a not just a major constructing force of what's wrong, it's also operating as a major force trying to make things better. The clergy in Minnesota, I know Jean, you just mentioned this, but the clergy in Minnesota have been a huge organizing and motivating force to push back against the fascism. There is no civil rights movement in this country that has ever succeeded without the involvement of the clergy, not just Christian clergy, but the religious left has always been a part of progressive organizing. So that is another thing that we're hoping the book helps you see. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to like religion. You can actively be suspicious of or even disdainful of religion. But we're in an all hands on deck situation. And you do have to learn to be in a room and work collaboratively with folks, even if the basis of their activism is not the basis of your activism. And I think I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Goodwin, I thought we could do like a few more minutes of like maybe a back and forth a la Keeping It 101, if that makes any sense for us. And then we can open it up for the questions in the chat if that is a good planning. We're podcasters by well, we're academics by trade, and then we're podcasters by hobby, and then we're back to being academics by trade, which means, and we're both like tri-state metro New York people, so we
Yeah.
talk real fast. So if that
Yeah.
feels annoying, tell us in the chat. We're good at that. Um,
We also talk over each other. So if we say something that you missed, you can ask us to repeat it or slow down, and we'll do our best.
Yeah, it's called collaborative, like
Collaborative
overlapping.
overlapping.
It's a linguistic pattern shared by people in the Northeast, especially
Yeah.
those of Jewish and Irish descent, of which we are. So, what I was gonna do, Goodwin, is say I was gonna ask us some questions, like we can popcorn questions about certain chapters in the book, like when we talk about religion being always about race, and that race is made of religion and religion is made of race. What do we mean by that?
Well, if we're talking about the United States as a context, which you know I love to do and makes you crazy, when we're saying that religion, or that race is made out of religion, we are not saying like, oh, race and religion have a special relationship. We are literally saying that our understanding of race gets built out of, again, not just religion, but European Christian imperialism, right? So when we are, well, when we are stealing all of the land that we currently occupy from the people who were already here, we show up and we start saying, okay, well, those people are different than us. So clearly it's cool to kill them and steal all their stuff. Also, now we have all this land, so we need other people who are fundamentally, scientifically different from us to come on in and work this land, because we're not going to do that. We would want to be paid and fed and not beaten. So initially, when we see enslavement and genocide brought by Western imperialists to this continent, what we see are divisions between Christians and strangers. The major divider is a religious divider. It is okay to wipe out, enslave, brutalize folks we now think of as Native and folks we now think of as Black because they are not Christian. Except that Christianity is an inherent. I adopted a puppy, and that's what's happening. Any hoodle. So after we have divided the whole world into Christians and strangers, and we here is the Pope and also a bunch of European nations, what we get is, because Christianity is inherently an expansionist project, is forced conversion of strangers. So Native people are no longer strangers, but surely they're not the same as us. Enslaved Africans are no longer strangers, but they're not the same as us. And this truly is where we get the concept of race the way that we understand it. It is not just the social construction of Blackness, it is the social construction of whiteness, of nativeness, of race as a concept. And that's happening at the same time that we get the expansion of empire, the creation of science, the idea of the university, kind of sort of all of those overlap to justify what is essentially a project of white Christian imperial expansion, which is to say, what is now the United States.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying, Megan, is that we really can't think about race without thinking about religion. We can't think about contemporary modern religion without thinking about race, because all of those determinants have already been baked in.
Yes, that is 100% what I would say. And then I'm just going to steal Eve Sedgwick's way of talking about social construction, which is to say, it's not just that our thinking about race is incomplete without thinking about religion, it's actually damaged, it's broken. We are fundamentally missing the point if we're trying to think about race without thinking about religion. Is it my turn to ask a question?
Yes, it is. And then we're going to open it up to everybody else.
Great. Well, one of the things that I so appreciate about you is the way that you've always helped me expand my thinking beyond the confines of what's now the United States. Because it turns out there's a whole world out there that I just kind of missed in grad school.
Ugh, Americanists, the worst.
But one of the things that was really great about this book is that it gave us time to slow down, get into some particulars, and particularly, to my mind, one of the biggest contributions that we're making with this book is helping folks, primarily Americans, primarily folks who are familiar with Christianity, think about how religion broadly shapes the world around us. And I'm particularly curious about how that happens, I don't know, say on like a map. What do religion and maps have to do with each other, is my question to you. Surely maps are a neutral way of conveying information, because that is possible.
Yeah, I think we're learning in real time that maps and who lays claim to land is like totally neutral and has nothing to do with global power whatsoever, nor about who we think belongs to a place. So, while all the stuff that Megan was talking about was being developed, while we're thinking about what constitutes whiteness, and it has always included Christianity, never not. We are also thinking about what constitutes land. So as we're expanding all of our empires, and the we here are Europeans, we have to figure out who is European, who isn't. And that might sound really obvious to all of us, but the nation state does not exist in this historical moment. We do not know that yet. We have ethnicities, though. And we have a notion that each land ought to reflect the majority ethnicity. That is the people of the land. That is the actual etymology where we get native from. And when we export that alongside imperial Christianity, we also export the idea that each land ought to have one people. This is the logic of partition around the world. This is the logic of the ethnostate. And Europe lies by saying it does not have ethnostates, when really it does have ethnostates. The ethnostates are just unmarked as white and Protestant, and therefore neutral. But as Europe goes around taking over the world, they also go around saying, okay, in this region, we're going to divide and conquer. Dividing and conquering isn't just to establish imperial rule, it is also to establish imperial ruling. So when the British get to South Asia, they're like, what do you mean you could be more than one thing at a time? In 1802, the British did this great census. And they're like, hey, knock, knock, I'm knocking on Megan's door. Megan lives in South Asia. And it's like 1802. Hey,
I
Megan,
I
I'm
definitely
going to ask an open-ended question. What religion are you and the people in your household?
I don't know what the hell you are talking about. Sometimes I celebrate Hindu rituals. Sometimes I meditate and commune with Buddha. And I don't know, sometimes I, I I have relatives who have been on Hajj. What is religion? What even are you talking about?
Great. Hi, I'm the British. It's now 1805 and I've received all of your messages. I do not understand because religion is one thing and one thing only. And it's really confusing to me, the survey asker, why more people in South Asia reported more than one religion when asked what religion is your household than one. Okay, fast forward. It's 1805. Megan, I'm knocking on your door again. Knock, knock, knock. It's me, the British Empire. Hi, hello. Megan, what religion is your household? Ah, don't answer. The choices are Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, animist. Which are you?
What's an animist?
Great
I
question. I'm not answering it.
Great, great.
Which is
I
your whole family? And you
Oh,
have to pick one from the list. You may
cool,
not pick two.
cool. I, being a smart South Asian person, am looking around and noticing that Hindus seem to have a better relationship with the folks that are currently occupying our land. So I'm I pick I pick Hindu. I pick Hindu.
Great choice. I'm going to mark that in my bucket.
Great.
I'm going to give this to a pigeon. It's going to be on a colored piece of paper. The pigeon is going to drop it in a corresponding piece of paper hole. And that is also where we get the word pigeonholed. You're welcome.
Stop it.
Double
Also,
history at the same time. But what I'm
amazing.
trying to do by our dramatic scene, ladies, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone else, is that like the British literally could not make sense of who they were ruling. So then they eliminated the ability to answer in the way you might. Then they coded the land as inherently Hindu. They set up quota systems for who would get hired and who would not. They set up privileging systems in different states based on majorities and minorities. And then when it came time to lose that land, they set it up based on demographic majorities, based on data they created out of censuses that they said had to fit one identity and one identity only. When we say that borders are lies that we tell on maps and defend with bombs, which is a quote from our book, we're not messing around. These are lies that people manipulate. But the logic of South Asia, where India should be Hindu and Pakistan should be Muslim, is the logic that one land deserves one people. That's the logic that divides Palestine into the divisions that it currently is in. And that is the logic of all ethno-nationalist states, of which the United States dabbles into being one. We dabble in it. Megan Goodwin, I see your hand is raised.
It is raised because how I so you're telling me that in India, but not just in India, the way that we
No,
think about religion and religious identity has less to do with what people are doing and more to do with filling out forms.
I mean, in the way we categorize things legally, often, yes, often that is the case. And certainly when we think about systems of power. So, in Religion is Not Done with You and in Keeping It 101, we talk about two ways to think about religion. The first is religion isn't done with you. Your individual choices are actually irrelevant in a system of power. I don't just get to say, I don't feel like being white today. That's not how power works. In the same way that changing my last name doesn't make me any less ethnically Jewish than if I keep it. By the same token, like we can't, and religion is what people do. So the fun way of thinking about religion is like, well, what are folks actually doing? When we observe people, what are they doing? If Jewish people aren't supposed to have tattoos, like why am I heavily inked? And not, is that bad, but rather, that's interesting. How does Ilyse, a really devout, practicing Jewish person, reconcile what we think we know about the rules with how we practice? So, those two catchphrases, religion isn't done with you, gets at the power and the system. And religion is what people do, gets at all the wacky ways people actually do their religion outside of archaic texts or glib kinds of commentary or shoulds and ought tos, right? Like you should not doesn't actually tell us what people do.
Yeah.
Goodwin, is there anything else you want to add before we move to questions?
I just want to think about how those two smush together, right?
Yeah.
Because in a land of individual freedom and religious liberty, surely people just get to opt in or opt out of being religious, right? A, not to be this person, but see our published works. If you look at the conclusion to our book, your race and religion are not opt in, particularly at the airport, right? Our buddy, comedian, our buddy Ahmed is going to get flagged for random screening, regardless of whether or not he might be personally an atheist. But the other thing that we want to be thinking about are the ways that race and religion, again, don't just make each other, or haven't just made each other, but continue to make each other. And my go-to example here, Ilyse mentioned that systems particularly tend to need forms, they need categories, they need simplification, right? One of the clearest places we see this are in prisons. Incarcerated people, to access religious rights, have to fit neatly into categories. Except that my go-to example here always is that QAnon shaman guy. Yeah, that is, yes, that's the face. Correct. Yes, that face. Right.
We
So,
sympathize.
yeah, yeah. You've seen the pictures. He's got his big stupid horns and he's doing native cosplay. Got arrested, goes to jail. He's already out, don't worry. But while he was incarcerated, he said to the judge, I am a shaman. I need shaman food, which apparently is organic veggies. Do you know how hard it is to get a vegetable while you're incarcerated? It is practically impossible. Here's the thing. He didn't even have to sue. He just said shaman and they gave him a salad. At the same time, Native men are incarcerated at the highest rate of any racial group in this country. They are not getting these kind of privileges and they absolutely have to sue to access them. So what this case study tells me is that religion is never just about religion, right? Folks who approximate whiteness, folks who are more legible to the system because of that whiteness, access protections that were originally put in place meant to help religious minorities. And that's a thing that we are seeing over and over and over again, particularly, although not exclusively in this current administration, are protections that were put in place that were meant to help minoritized religious communities. That protection is being twisted and operationalized to protect whiteness and Christianity.
So I want to just share something real quick because several years ago, 3, 4, 5, something like that, in Navajo County here in Arizona, which is north, it's a very rural space, right? We got a call from one of our members because she's a social worker or therapist in the prison system or in the jail system, county jail. And there was a Navajo man or native man. I don't even know what tribe he was with, but he, was asking for his native religious sacraments, or whatever. And of course, completely ignored. Like, you can't walk into a room in a prison without being slapped with a bunch of Bibles, right? Like if you ask for religious sacraments, Bibles galore. But when it came to that man's individual religious expression, the county was not eager to, to meet him there. And so thankfully, because of this member, we were able to intervene, our legal director Diane Post, and it was rectified. But again, that's only because this woman is passionate about the idea of everybody's ability to express their own religion. And so who knows how many of those people are in prisons not getting the materials, the sacred books, or whatever it is that they need to be able to worship in the way that they see fit.
Yeah. Well, and one of the issues that comes up, particularly when we're thinking about religion and incarcerated people, is that often the problems are structural and not just on an individual basis. And it's bigger than just dietary constraints, right? I wrote an article a while back about a man who was executed in Georgia. He was Muslim, and he requested that an imam be present in his last moments. And the state denied him, and then the Supreme Court denied him. And the issue wasn't just the blatant Islamophobia. The issue was the state of Georgia only allows clergy that have a formal relationship with the state to be present. And it just so happens that all of the clergy that have a formal relationship with the state of Georgia are Christian. So to grant this man his dying wish would have required so much backlog that the Supreme Court just kind of threw up its hands and said, you're on your own. So even in these last and most vulnerable moments, religion not done with us.
There is a question that came up just a little bit earlier when you were talking about India and British imperialism. And the question comes from Sandra: why Hindu and not Sikh?
Great question. The real answer is British imperialist racism. So Sikhism, and so Sikhs often pronounce Sikh, S-I-K-H, like Sikh, with that little vocalization at the end, Sikh. But if you need to say Sikh, that's awesome. But Sikh is kind of like over anglicized. So I'm going to say Sikh. If you are Sikh and you pronounce it your own way, that's awesome. But it took me a long time to learn all these Indic languages. I'm going to practice, right?
Sure.
Okay, so Sikhism, under British logic, especially in the very early 19th century, so 1802, 1805, when these censuses are, they did not see Sikhism as its own religion. They saw it as a derivation either of Islam or of Hinduism, depending on the author. But the idea here was that it was a minor and local religion and therefore wasn't useful data for the British. They wanted to know which of the big world religions did you fit in? Because minor religions aren't really religions. They're sort of like weird, ethnic, local, family things, and would fall much more closely to how American imperialists define native religion, this kind of like lesser, unaffiliated, looser thing. We don't have to accept that, but that was the logic of the British. That's not, obviously, that is not my opinion at all. Sikhi is a real religion, and there's lots of antecedents to it. And yes, it does come of age and grow up in a complex and composite religious milieu in North India. But the British imperialists didn't see that at all. They see it as like a derivation of either Hinduism or Islam, frankly, depending on where the imperialist was living. Not like we can map it out. That's a great question, though. Thank you for asking.
I was doom scrolling the other day. And I don't remember, I want to say it was some congressman or senator when they were, or maybe an ICE representative, I don't know. And it was, of course, like on a Newsmax or Fox News kind of thing. And he, because they're revising history every single day. And they were talking about racial profiling. And his argument was basically saying that our white founding fathers actually came here to preserve their whiteness and establish an all-white nation. So none of us should be surprised by this. Basically, like, hello, he was like, "Have you not paid attention?" And in a way, he's like kind of not wrong.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, so I would just love to hear your thoughts about this idea of how they weaponize both race and religion to advance their agenda.
Yeah. I mean, I think that senator or congressperson is confused because They're thinking of Massachusetts, which 100% that was the project. But also, yeah, whiteness as we now understand it and white supremacy have always been part of the American project. It's not just what America is, but it's never not what America is, right?
And Christianity.
And well, I was going to say, it frankly, there is no separating whiteness from Christianity if we're talking about an American context. That just doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
If we are thinking about the founding fathers and what the founding fathers wanted, the funny thing is they wrote a lot of shit down. And they specifically said, we would like religion not to be involved in this. But what they're talking about when they're talking about religion is churches, right? They're not talking about this conviction that folks with complexions like mine should basically run the world. They are not thinking about all of the ways that the churches have reinforced that over centuries. So yes, you've got, Thomas Jefferson talking about a wall of separation between church and state, and how everybody should get to be included in the American project. You get George Washington talking about giving, to bigotry no sanction, persecution no assistance. They're great ideas. That has never been America. And also, and I'm with James Baldwin and Ralph Ellison here, just because it's never been America doesn't mean it's not what America could be. And I think it's a mistake to assume that religion isn't a part of that project. Even again, if you're coming at it from a secularist perspective, recognizing that these communities are active, they are engaged, is part of what effective organizing looks like. So I'm thinking of Black Panthers, I'm thinking of Young Lords showing up in church spaces, showing up in religious spaces because they mean something to the community and because it's a space where people are used to thinking about each other and taking care of a community. So yeah, on the one hand, senator / congressperson, probably not wrong. Yes, this has always been what America is about. It is about promoting white Christian supremacy. But also, if we make that the only thing America has ever been about, we are erasing all of the lives and presences and creativity and resistance and survival and persistence of all of the not white folks who have been here along, and all of the white folks who have rejected that and tried as much as we can to hold America to its word and say, look, this is what you said was important to you. Let's actually do it.
Go ahead. Did you want to add anything, Ilyse?
No, I was just done moving around, making noise.
Okay. So there's a question coming from Claudia, and I'm assuming that she's probably talking about when we were having the conversation about how religion was decided upon in colonial India, right? But the question is, how does caste relate to this? But again, I feel like we have our own caste system here. It's just not as delineated as it is in India. So go ahead and speak to it, and whatever way.
Affects stuff in the U.S. too, but I'm gonna let Ilyse talk first.
Yeah, caste is just another global hierarchical system, and it's global because South Asians live around the world. And notice I'm not just saying Hindus, because while caste does mostly, I mean, like it's not even all the way, mostly come from majority Hindu sources and Hindu practice, it is a social system. And so everyone that lives there has a caste and a caste place in the caste system. Even the folks that are like, wait, I heard that people converted to Buddhism or Sikhism or Islam to get out of the caste system. Sure, but then they got out of the caste system, got a different name for their caste, their religion name. That's it. So like I do a lot of work in North India, and in North India outside of the city of Agra, so like where the Taj Mahal is a huge Muslim population historically. And those folks talk about themselves as Muslim, and they list their caste or their jat. It's Jat. There's caste, which we understand is this big four-part system where there's like the Brahmins, the warriors, like you learn this in high school. But the way actual South Asians talk about it is in this word called jat, which means almost like a guild. Like, what is your family name? What is your organizing principle? We do not have a cognate for this in Western context, but the closest I can come are all the people whose last names are action words, like Schumacher, right? Or Miller. Anyone who has like a job last name, That's similar to how caste juts work. But everyone has one. Everyone, even foreigners. Like if you live there long enough, you get part of the foreigner caste, whoever lives in your community, whatever that's ranked as, and it has different abilities. So it's a globalizing system. It's why when folks talk about it as related to class, it doesn't quite work because it's not all the way tied to finances. It doesn't quite work the same way as race because there is no being in between. There is no intersectional caste because they're really rigid, and you can't like intermarry because you trade. There's no like mixed casteness. So caste is related to that system. The British didn't like the system. They thought it was really complicated and they couldn't understand it because it didn't map neatly onto race or religion. And then South Asian activists learned really quickly that if they downplayed the role of caste, that they would get further with Western parliamentarians and other sources of power. And technically speaking, the caste system is and has been illegal in India since its independence. It's just also deeply important and shows up in the United States. Like California routinely has anti-caste has had routine appeals for anti-casteist legislation because casteism is so prevalent, especially in Silicon Valley, that folks who think they are escaping it from South Asia only encounter it in the United States in rampant ways and in ways that are not historically protected legally. Yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
So Claudia is clarifying. She says, I was thinking of the American caste system as labeled, or I'm sorry, as Isabel
Yeah.
Wilkerson wrote about it. So if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I think I was one of the people who thought yes and about the Wilkerson cast. I agree that American social units are really hard and they are lifelong. We are founded as a chattel. We are the inheritors of a chattel slavery system. We believe in inheriting wealth, class, and status.
Mhm.
That is absolutely casteist. But where I think that the racial and class thing falls apart in South Asia is I actually think Wilkerson doesn't understand the Indian caste system. I think she had a really basic textbook definition of it, like got her seventh grade, eighth grade Wikipedia and was like, oh, that's a really good analogy. That's a really good analogy. And at the superficial level, it totally works. As a scholar of South Asia who's lived there on and off for 20 years, it doesn't really work at all, and it shows. So that's but like as a way to think about American politics, yeah, thinking about us as entrenched and stuck and that our progeny are related to us only through their status, that is absolutely a casteist logic. It's just superficial. Yeah, that's my take
Mhm.
on that book. But thank you. It's a good question.
Okay, now something's happening. Okay, hold on. I can't keep up. Ron is asking, can you discuss the impact of James Dobson, Bill Gothard, and others that have ushered hierarchy, dominance, and power and control through fear? And that's making the assumption. I'm sure you're familiar with James Dobson, Bill Gothard, right? Yeah. Is it Goddard though? Is it Gothard or Goddard? I can't remember. Anyway, so if you'd like to speak to that.
Oh, I'm just assigning everybody homework in the chat. Speaking of James Dobson,
Yeah, I was
we
going
had a
to say, this one I know is not mine. That one's all you. I was like, how many of these things have you personally written? Go.
so I didn't actually write the Dobson piece. The Dobson piece was written by Sarah Mosliner, who is phenomenal. And I'm a share a gossip. So I am senior editor at Religion Dispatches, and I'm very specifically tasked with bringing in underrepresented and under platform voices. We also love Sarah. Sarah is lovely. And she's got a new book out. So After Purity, check it out. The week that James Dobson died, my editor-in-chief was on vacation, which is funny because Evan has not taken a vacation in years. And the two times he took off this year, the Pope died, and then James Dobson died. So now he's scared to go on vacation again, which I don't know. I mean, like,
I don't know. I kind of want him to take another vacation. There's a few people on my list.
right?
Yeah.
Like, so the reason I bring it up is because I reached out to a scholar who had written a very well-respected book on James Dobson and Focus on the Family. And I worked with her all day. It happened on a Friday. Worked with her all day to get this piece out, and then we published it, and she immediately made me take it down because she felt that I was being too celebratory of James Dobson being dead. And I obviously respected her wishes, but also thought, but how could we celebrate enough that James Dobson has died? We cannot. So I reached out to my buddy Sarah and said, hey, Sarah, how would you frame A, would you be interested, and B, how would you frame this? And the piece that she wrote for me, which I put in the chat, I never let people write their own headlines. I am too much of a control freak. I left this one because her headline was, I will always be afraid of James Dobson.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to crib from her because she's a far more educated person on conservative mainstream Protestantism than I am. What Sarah shared with me and with our readers is that James Dobson and folks like him structured her entire childhood, her entire family structure. It made her alienated from her body. It made her scared of men. It made her scared of herself, of her sexuality, of her ambition. It made her not trust herself. And that, A, is just true and I think needs to be said. B, is a big reason I'm happy that James Dobson is dead. And C, is what we're seeing in, again, every branch of our government that is trying to keep women and femmes home, not in the workforce, not able to access reliable healthcare, not able to advocate for themselves. I think there has been real and lasting damage, and that's bad on its own. And also, I think far too many of us, and I am absolutely including myself here, treated these folks like a joke for way too long. It was ridiculous. It was funny. It was so over the top. How could anybody possibly believe this? Except that they did. And then more people believed it, and more people invested in it. More people saw it as a way to institute social control, and now it's running our country. So again, even if you don't care about it, even if you think it's absolutely ridiculous, you have to pay attention to religion, because religion, and particularly white Christianity, white Christian nationalism, is playing a long game, and it is starting at the very basic building blocks of our society, our families, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's James Dobson and the world he gave us.
When I think it was when I was still pregnant with my son, who's now 28. My mom gave me The Well-Trained Child by James Dobson. And I didn't really know very much about him, and interestingly, my parents were agnostic at home for the most part. Like, if my mom was Catholic, my dad, she was insistent that my older sisters be Catholic, so they got dragged to catechism and Sunday school and all that stuff. But thankfully, she moved out of state by the time I came around, so I avoided all that stuff. But then my mom now is like full MAGA, which is so weird. She used to be a union leader, and now she's full MAGA. It's very strange. But she got me this book. I started reading through it a little bit, and I was like, what the? Does she know me at all? Like, I mean, I got the book You Are Your Child's First Teacher and Spiritual Midwifery and all that kind of, like, I did a home birth. We had a family bed. Like, how would you think that I would be into blanket training? Like, no. And that's the thing that I feel like I'm constantly having to remind myself of, because we focus not only on the state legislature when it comes to our lobbying efforts, but we now focus on school boards too. And we have a lot of these, Moms for Liberty types who, the way that they think of children, and it's all about parental rights, right? Because it's about that evangelical umbrella of men, pastor, man, wife, children. And then as the young male children, they supersede the mother at some point too. And it's the only book that I recall that. Well, wait, there was also Baby Wise by that guy, Gary Ezzo. He's a horrible person too. Somebody gave me that book. And so those are the only two books that I've ever actually thrown in the garbage. Like, usually I'll donate them, but those are dangerous. And Gary Ezzo was even excommunicated from his church because he said that when newborn babies, by the way, when babies are crying, they're manipulating you, and you need to teach them at birth to be obedient. So children were literally starving to death and dying because of his ridiculous practices. Well, I feel like there was a point to that. Sorry.
No, there is absolutely a point to it. And the point is we don't treat children like they're people, we treat them like their
Property.
right? And this extends well beyond the family, not that it would be enough just that this is damaging children in family situations, and it absolutely is. But the way that we see this expanded out to, I'm not going to be the person to tell you all about adoption because that's Ilyse's next book, but the commodification and trafficking of children happens because we don't think about children as people. What we are seeing in terms of the way that vaccinations are being undermined is because we're not treating children as people who deserve to live. We're treating them as the property of their parents who then get to impose their beliefs and their, frankly, ignorance on those children. The fact that we have a federal situation in which kids can't go to school, right? Kids aren't owed an education because Minnesota is being occupied. We're not treating kids like they're humans. We don't treat kids like they're humans. And this, again, extends from this thinking that children are possessions to be controlled and not humans to be nurtured and protected until they can do that for themselves.
It reminds me too that the United States, what is it, since 1989, could have signed on to the Convention on the Rights of a Child. You know, and like you can go to like parentalrights.org. They have a statement about the dangers because it was like Ilhan Omar or somebody like that who wanted to like reintroduce it to Congress and get it approved. And the parental rights people lost their minds. And the big reason that they didn't like it, let me see if I have it up here somewhere. I don't. But it was like, well, because that if that happens, then you know, people will have to be informed if a child is being harmed, you know, and because their desire to especially harm their LGBTQ or maybe kids who have autism or who are just different in whatever way, they don't want that child's voice to be heard because they, because of their religion, get to treat that child however the fuck they want to, even if it's detrimental to that child. And there were a few other points as to why they thought it was such a terrible thing for, you know, the United States to sign on to this. But yeah, that was essentially, you know, that was one of the reasons why.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have a very good track record around children and child trafficking. One of the things Megan and I did not include in Religion is Not Done with You, but we did write about for the Revealer. Um, and Megan is going to get you that link right now, is about white Christian nationalism and the adoption trade. Like the reality, I'm an adoptee and I talk a lot about adoption, and there's a space where we can see a lot of these issues, the things that we're talking about, like the rights of children versus the rights of parents or the rights of adults, the rights of minors is a really big thing when we're talking about adoption and the rights of children. Um, and there's a way that, like, when you look at it, we talk about how religion plays in, but also how race played in as well. And so it's a really harrowing. I think most parts of American history are harrowing.
They really, really are. And you know, just this week. Okay, so I this week there were a couple of bills that came up in our state legislature, and one of them was about the American Library Association because they want, even though most of our schools can't even afford librarians, much less a membership to the American Library Association, they want to outlaw it. And we know, and even though the sponsor of the bill says, "Oh no, this is, you know, we're not talking about regular libraries." Yeah, because he's testing the waters right now to see how far he can get with it, to see if next year he can target regular libraries. Let's just call it what it is. And so, you know, my point was like, this is a, you all talk about parental rights a lot, you know, and here you are deciding, because his argument is that it's, you know, that there's a woke people who are pushing pornography on our children and of course all that stuff. So they, when it comes from people like me, parental rights, they basically say, well, no, we actually have, we also have a moral authority. And so some of these parents just aren't doing a good enough job with their own, moral compass. So it's up to us now. The party that used to say local control, small government. No, 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 because now we're at a crisis, right? We've lost God in this country, and we hear it over and over and over again. It's so tiresome. There was no point to that, just me complaining, I think.
No, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I exist in a universe with children, and well, I guess we all do, but my own personal house universe has children in it, and um, it is exhausting when someone chooses your religion for you, even when you're perfectly comfortable with the one you've already got.
Mm-hmm.
Tiresome.
And like I put it in the chat earlier, this idea that we're constantly being told what religion this country is, even though they say we're founded, we're not really, but all of our patriarchal practices, it's clearly a Christian nation for the sake of that argument. Oh God, there was a point to that, but I'm 53 years old, and sometimes those thoughts escape me. Maybe it'll come back to me. My apologies.
We get it.
Let's see. Speaking of, we've got a bill coming up here this coming week. I think it's going to be on Tuesday in the House Education Committee. It's HB 2266, where they are trying. So we are a state that says students may be dismissed for religious instruction, during school hours. They may, but you don't have to do that. So now there's a nationwide organization called LifeWise that is going state by state and trying to impose the shall ruling on that. Like, you have to do this. And this is an organization that went from $150,000 back in 2020 annual budget to now like 37.5 million. And it's a lot of dark money that are, what do they call it, donor managed funds. So people can donate anonymously and the fund is being managed, but they are going state by state and trying to impose this bill on us. So in our state, we are really no stranger to this kind of imposition of religion. Yeah. Here's a question. It says, Mona asked, I hope I can say it, Gujarat last
Perfect.
March. Oh, good. And was so surprised at the anti-Gandhi rhetoric. Can you please talk about Modi?
Yes. Okay. Well, Modi's a problem, a real big problem. Modi's a problem. Much like Trump is a problem, Modi too is a problem. He's a real fascist. And like that is not, I know that we're all throwing that around because we can. He is. So Modi is a member of the BJP, which is India's ruling party right now. India has a parliamentary system, so there are quite a lot of parties and coalitions, but the BJP is a Hindu nationalist, explicitly Hindu nationalist party that has slowly over the last 35 years gained power, usually through brutal tactics of exclusion and derision. Modi was the governor of Gujarat. During one such violent moment where there were riots, anti-Muslim pogroms, there's no other way to describe them. They were absolutely pogroms, targeted police-supported raids of Muslim neighborhoods where something like 2,500 to 4,000 people lost their lives in one evening. Modi explicitly refers to Muslims as vermin that he wanted to purge from Gujarat when he was the governor of Gujarat. So people freaking hate Modi outside of Gujarat. Inside of Gujarat, actually people hate him in Gujarat also because like it's a very Muslim state. There's a lot of problems, but Modi is both very popular in South Asia amongst the Hindu right and very unpopular for everybody else because he's really just one of these out loud fascists that fundamentally thinks that India is and has always been and only ought to be exclusively Hindu. And within Hindu, he includes national religions of India, including Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism, and a couple other local religions. Yeah, so Modi's a real problem. The anti-Gandhi like Mahatma Gandhi or the anti-Gandhi like anti-Congress party rhetoric. So it's tricky because Mahatma Gandhi is the Gandhi we know, but Gandhi is actually a very common last name in South Asia and was the last name of quite a lot of the ruling elite, some of whom were related to the Gandhi and some of whom were not. So folks that It's like tricky because it's like Smith, right? Like everyone's last name is Smith, and like, are you those Smiths? No, but that one married that one, so yes, but also no, right? So and I would assume in Gujarat that the anti-Gandhi rhetoric is actually anti-Congress party rhetoric because the Gandhis are that party politic. But I have to be honest, I'm not up on my Gujarat news lately, so I don't know if there's like there's elections coming in India, so I don't know if a Congress party under the name of Gandhi is running or what. But that would be my best guess.
And be sure to click on the links that Megan provided too. She threw a couple different links in there too. So if we want to, study up after this webinar, we can all do that. I want to honor everybody's time. It is 12:55 today, and this has been a really, really good talk. So feel free, by the way, to continue to throw up any links that you want. But because I don't want to go over time, I am going to close this out. And I always close this out the same way every week because everything is terrible and the world is on fire and every headline is like worse than the one that came before it. So in these times, it's really tough to find hope. So you two can decide who goes first and who goes second. But my question to you is, in these difficult times, what does give you hope?
Community. I'm a community girl. I'm a drop in the bucket activist. I've been saying this for years. Every drop in the bucket raises the water, not the tide, the water. I am not so delusional as to think that the work I am doing will change anything in the course of history, but I can make my neighborhood block better, right? So do you have a Signal account with your neighbors? Are you checking on them? Are you expanding that out? All of those are the things that give me hope, right? Like my kids had the flu last week. We were down for the count. It was real bad in our house. And neighbors that we don't usually talk to because we're slightly off generation. It's like just older than us that it's like awkward and their kids aren't my kids' ages, but they still have kids. They're still in the thick of it. They came over with a big bucket of soup that never happened before we lived in this house for 11 years because we made the effort, right? So for me, hope is community because ultimately, like governments are just people. They're just
I love,
people.
yeah, and again, I am not a Disney shill or anything like that, but Andor does it really kind of it's a bit of a rah-rah thing for me to watch and just be like, okay, I can do this. Last night I was in Tempe with a group of mostly retired individuals. They all had their own Signal chat within their group, and then they had all started their own community outreach within their neighborhoods. And there was a woman that brought 400 3D printer whistles, ice whistles. And then next week, they're all going to get together and put together care packages for people who are protesting. You know what I mean? Like this is the hope. Like I said in the beginning, Minnesota and the people there are giving me so much hope right now. So I'm sorry, Megan, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. So please let the people know what gives you hope in these tough times.
My thunder is very hard to pilfer. Don't even worry about it. I mean, I think Andor is great, not just because it dramatizes these moments of overcoming authoritarianism and totalitarianism, but it also makes plain how much planning needs to go into resistance and quite frankly, the human cost of resistance. This is not something that happens overnight, and it is not something that happens for free. So, watching folks put their bodies and their lives on the line for, if we're talking in Andor terms, a sunrise they'll never see, makes me feel feels. I put a couple more links in the chat because citational practices are my love language. But things that are giving me hope, dinosaurs, dinosaurs are great. But the reason I brought it up actually is because I did an interview with Hannah McGregor, who we adore, and her book, Clever Girl, talks about how Jurassic Park is actually a toolkit for surviving the apocalypse. And not just the apocalypse, but the series of apocalypses that minoritized and oppressed peoples have always been living through. And then the other link that I put in the chat is an interview with Jelaine Schmidt, who was instrumental in getting the Robert E. Lee statue pulled down in Charlottesville. And that statue and the Stonewall Jackson statue that were in Charlottesville were recently turned into museum installations. They are art now. And that happened because Jelaine and her comrades went to planning meetings every freaking week for a year and then had more planning meetings about How do we get these materials? How do we responsibly transform them? How do we make sure that this reflects not just what we personally think should happen, but the commitments of the community? And so that interview is one of my favorite pieces that I've ever done, because I think it is such a 101 into what local organizing looks like. And to go from endless, boring municipal meetings to that monument to racism and white supremacy came down and is now art. Kara Walker has made something horrible and beautiful out of it. For me, was truly just inspiring, doesn't even begin. But, you know, I think all the time about Mariam Kaba saying that hope is a discipline, right? It's not vibes. Frankly, the thinking of hope as a belief or a feeling, frankly, can be traced to white Christianity and the way that we think about belief. Is a longer conversation. But hope's a thing that you do. You do it with your neighbors. You do it with your communities online. You do it with folks you'll never get to sit down with, but are sharing your commitments and are showing up and learning from each other. So yes, very similar to what all of you have said.
I love that. I wrote it down. Hope is a discipline, and you're absolutely right. I just enjoyed this conversation so much today, and now I have like 1,000 links on my other monitor so that I can go back and read them later and avoid the real work that I have to do. But I do appreciate both of you joining us. And if there's anything, take a minute, because I know that you have a book coming out, Ilyse. So if you want to talk about when that's going to be released or where we can purchase it, if you've got a link or anything like that.
No, that's like well in preparation. That's many years out.
Oh, okay.
The Religion is Not Done With You is our most recent book. That's our most recent book. But thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Well, you'll have to let us know when we can pre-order your book, and maybe you'll join us again.
Thanks
all right.
so
Well, thank you,
everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you all, and everybody else. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.